Minimalists.
Do you guys have any experience with like technology fasting, like detoxes around technology? Like one of the things that I'm really concerned with, I look at my niece and she's 15, and like if you take her cell phone away from her, she just goes ballistic. Like tears start flowing, and you're just like, she's glued to it in a way that like I never was, like really intense. But she's also grown up with it, where we didn't have those when I was a kid. What are your thoughts on this need for constant stimulation, and how do you guys find balance there?
Yeah, I think that the tools, the technology that's introduced into our lives, I mean, a tool is as good as its user. And, you can take a hammer and hammer a nail with it, or I can bludgeon Josh over the head with it. I mean, there are two different, or a lot of different ways to use a hammer. So I think that when these things get introduced, we're not Luddites. We don't want to shun new technology, but with something like minimalism, it is a philosophy that can help someone to use their equipment a little bit more intentional. It is scary though, man. Like when I think about teenagers and how they'll be in the same room, not talking, but they'll be texting.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's crazy.
And to your point of this stimulation, I mean, dude, the human brain is built for we love stimulation, man.
Yeah.
So the more that this technology comes out, the more companies are trying to stimulate our brains to get our attention. So,
but then nighttime rolls around and you shut off your device, and all of a sudden your brain's been going and it wants more. And then we start using our devices in bed, and it's slippery slope.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, there are a few rules there you can put in place. Like my partner and I won't but any screens in the bedroom. Like no TV in the bedroom, no phones in the bedroom, but the concept you're talking about here with 15-year-old being constantly on their phone, it reminded me of a few things. One is there was this art exhibit I saw of it was photos. It was a bunch of photos of people. This photographer took photos of families who were on their phones, but then photoshopped the phones out of their hands. And we look crazy. I mean, we truly. You imagine the three of us just sitting here. If we were all on our hand, just staring at our blank hands, people would think we had some sort of mental disorder.
Oh, for sure.
And my doctor calls this the medium cognitive load. I did a podcast with him. We were talking about health problems, and one of the things we talked about was this link between mental health and constant stimulus. But he was talking about how one of the worst ways to work out is just run at that medium pace, a 6 or a 7 for hours on end, right? It's not the best thing for your body. But we're doing the same thing to our minds with the constant stimuli. It's the opposite of, are you familiar with Cal Newport, Deep Work?
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't Deep Work the book.
Yeah, he's a professor at Georgetown.
I have it on Audible, but I haven't listened to it yet.
You'll love it. And he on his blog, check out his blog too. He writes a lot about digital minimalism. He also has a great TEDx talk called "Quit Social Media," and he's not a Luddite. He's younger than us for sure. He's late 20s, early 30s, but has never had a social media account, and writes very eloquently as to why. He's not shunning technology. In fact, he's embracing different types of technology that allow him to do more deep work, as opposed to that the medium cognitive load, where you can stimulate yourself for 20 hours a day, but is it meaningful?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to these new technologies, I mean, with kids, it's like, as a parent, you don't want to have to order your kid around, like tell them exactly what to do, when to do it.
Yeah.
But, it's so easy for me to say this not being a parent too. But, I steal this from Joshua Becker. He's got a great book. Oh my goodness, it's slipping me.
The More of Less?
No, the Minimalism with Kids.
Oh, Clutter-Free with Kids.
Clutter-free with Kids. But I totally am stealing from that, where he talks about how you don't want to tell your kids what to do, but you do want to set some boundaries. And I think like that with the 15-year-old, I mean, you don't want to take their phone away forever.
Right.
But, maybe some boundaries need to be set. But I think about not just if I have kids, but with myself. I mean, Josh was talking about how him and Bex don't have, screen time in bed. And it's, Mariah and I, setting these boundaries for ourselves, implementing these rules, it allows us to have the household that we want. And yeah, if we have kids in our lives, like we're gonna, set those boundaries for them as well. But certainly with all of the devices we have to stimulate us, we do have to have some boundaries, because if we don't, then it gets out of control and we end up
even as adults, we need to have them. It's
Absolutely.
like I try to find a little bit of time just to be bored. And I think of people think of bored as like it's such a negative word. They're just like, oh, to be bored, oh, that sounds horrible.
It's got a connotation.
Like, right, exactly. So I actually like that people think it's negative. I'm like, well, I want to go do that and see what that feels like.
I love that,
and
man.
like maybe like embrace that and see if it takes me in a different direction or a different space in my head. And so if we could just all sit around and be a little bored. Mr. Rogers did this great thing where he was on TV and he's like, kids, what is a minute like? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a minute? And he started a timer. And they literally on television watched a clock go around for a minute. And then when it was up, he's like, there you go. That's a minute. It's like, can you imagine? Yeah. Like kids,
it would not fly today.
It would not fly today at all.
Well, it's funny. I was just at the Portland Art Museum this morning, and there's this photographer, Robert Flick, which, by the way, Flick is a great last name for a photographer.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
He had to have changed that at some point, right?
I know, right? But he's from Canada, I believe, but moved to Los Angeles and still lives in Los Angeles. But he spent 2 years when he first moved there photographing a parking structure for 2 years.
Wow.
And the photos, I walked around the whole museum this morning, and they were the most striking out of all the photos there. There are no cars and no people. He made sure he photographed this parking garage. It's a massive parking garage, only when there were no cars and no people present. And I connected this because of the boredom thing. Like, there is a certain banality in this parking structure, but there's also beauty in the banality. And then I think the opposite is also true. We're so overstimulated, by these things that seem extraordinary. An iPad? That's magic to someone from 100 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so extraordinary, but there's banality in the extraordinary as well, because if we're constantly passing, now we just see people, there's the famous sort of memed video of this little baby who encounters a print magazine for the first time, and she just puzzled because she can't figure out how to swipe left on the magazine cover because the stupid print magazine is not swiping, and so it's a weird thing how we've developed this extraordinary world, but it's not as extraordinary as we thought. And I was blown away by these photos of a damn parking garage because of the light and the angles and the structure and the surfaces, and there was something just beautiful about the banal.